What is up, everyone? All right, today, boom, Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. This is a sequel to Skyward, which I buddy read with my Discord last month, and now I read Starsight. So this will be my spoiler-free section for the review, but of course there will be spoilers for the first book, so if you haven't read Skyward yet, I would read that and then come back and yeah, then we can talk. So we continue following around Spensa, and her situation on her homeworld is not looking great. The Krell are accelerating their attacks and sending more ships to attack them. And you're following around, Jorgen, Spensa, Kemelin. Is that her name? I can't even remember. But then something happens and Spensa actually flies to another planet very early in the book, and she's kind of behind enemy lines, if you will. And she's basically a spy for all intensive purposes. So you go from a situation in the first book where she's comfortable, she's been dreaming about being a pilot her whole life, and then in the second book, she's a spy and she knows nothing about being a spy, and it's pretty weird for her. So, as you might imagine, this book has a lot more world building than the first book. With the first book, it was just like, humans on a base being attacked constantly. And that was it. But this book, we go to a different planet, we meet different species, different cultures, we figure out things about their government, and then, of course, by the nature of being a spy, the entire goal is to kind of figure out more things about the world and what's going on. And basically, any information that Spensa gets about Krell culture is potentially important, right? Because the humans know nothing about this force that keeps attacking them, or why they're attacking them, or like how to get them to stop attacking them, nothing like that. And I just loved all this world building. That was one of the biggest pros for me in this book. There's definitely hierarchies explored within the world of who has like more power, or like what species has more power, what people, what values are or traits are inherently like good in their culture, and what is like bad, and what makes a people civilized. What do they think makes the humans like less civilized than the alien Krell? So like concepts like that are explored. Things that were surprising to me were explored, like gender was explored through different species, which is actually very realistic, because if you look at like other cultures in the real world that were more isolated from European cultures, like you'll find things like the Samoan third gender, and it's like, oh, so in some cultures, it's not really like a gender binary. And then, of course, if you look at like ancient Greek society, they had more like fluid gender things going on with all that. So yeah, that's kind of like explored in this book through these fantasy cultures in a very interesting way. And yeah, I don't even know how I could praise the cultures within this book more than I already have without giving spoilers. So we're going to move on and talk about the sort of political intrigue situation. So the first book didn't really have political intrigue, or to the extent that it did, it was all based on Spensa trying to figure out what was going on with her father. But this political intrigue felt like it had more stakes, plot-wise, world-wise, like survival of the human race wise. And, I like my political intrigue. And this is like a YA book, so it wasn't like super deep, complex, but it was pretty complex. It was definitely complex enough. And yeah, I was just a fan of that. Now, where the first book excelled was the character development, and Spensa was like a very well done character, I thought. And she was still well done in this book as well. But she was kind of like backing into situations more than like proactively entering like this Air Force, which she was doing in the first book. This one, it feels like, okay, I'm a spy now. How did that happen? I don't know. But it's more of like making the best of a bad situation rather than like following your dreams and following your heart. And also with the side characters in the first book, I loved all the side characters. Whenever you have like a crew situation, all the side characters feel awesome. And, they're really like on a team. So that's makes it feel like everyone's in it together. And like even if Spensa only exchanges 2 words with one of her crewmates, they're on the same team, and like it's still heartbreaking when they die. So yeah, that was the best part of the first book. But the second book, there are also good side characters. I think I liked them more in the first book. And then in the second book, it was the side characters coming in, and they were very good for world building because there were a lot of different species, and Spencer was talking to like more dominant species and more like oppressed species. So it was cool in a world building cultural way, but not so much in like, oh, I'm so interested in this person way. Although a lot of the side characters in this book were interesting as well. So yeah, overall, I liked book 2 more than book 1 by a bit. You know, I love all that cultural world building stuff, and I really missed that in book 1. Like, I liked book 1 as well, but book 2 just added that extra like world and concept and themes and cultures and all that good stuff for me to think about. So yeah, I'd recommend this book, and definitely check these out before book 3 comes out, hopefully later this year, I think. And yeah, let's move into spoilers because there are definitely some things I want to talk about. First, M-Bot. Oh man, I loved M-Bot. He was like maybe my favorite character in the first book. Actually, I think he was my favorite character. Oh no. It's not staying. What happened? Boom. There we go. Beautiful. Where was I? M-Bot. Great. He was having like an identity crisis, wasn't he? It was like kind of a weird, almost midlife crisis where he's like, what is my purpose? Am I human? Like, what is free will? What is free thought? And it was almost like I was like watching like a pop philosophy video or something, and it wasn't like boring philosophy. Like, you know, if you read like any like Descartes or something, he's like, does this shelf exist? I don't know, it could be figment of imagination. Why am I making a Frenchman Russian? Could be fake shelf. It still sounds Russian. I don't know, does everything I do sound Russian? But yeah, M-Bot made it very personal, very interesting, and I loved that, and I loved where, you know, his story went, and we're still learning more about M-Bot and what his original mission was, and why was he looking for mushrooms when we found him in book 1. And yeah, M-Bot just very interesting. Probably the best character from this series, in my opinion, because he both has like a rich plot behind him, while also having like very interesting character development and interesting character internal conflicts. Also, having Doomslug around was always fun, and the way the slug like integrates within the plot, I love it. I love it so much. And it's certainly not something you would expect, right? It's like these random slugs are what allows for like hyperspace travel. Very unexpected, very awesome plot twist. Love it. Now, let's talk about the other characters. So, like, the new crew was probably less interesting to me than the old crew, or, you know, the original, like, Jorgen and everyone from the first book. But the way they were all integrated with the plot, I found very interesting in this book. And I'm talking about this book's crew. Because, you know, Spence is a spy, but she's developing these connections with, you know, these different alien species that are part of her new crew. And it was interesting for me to put myself in Spence's shoes to be like, okay, who would I trust here? And it's like, well, Blade's a human, but you know, that doesn't mean you trust the human just because they're a human. And in fact, I was pretty against trusting Blade, but Spencer did trust Blade, which was pretty unfortunate in the end. And I was actually kind of like frustrated when that happened because I was like, no, I did not want this to happen. But Spencer's like an inexperienced spy, and I don't know, maybe she thought it would work out better. But if like an experienced spy had done that in a book, I would have been more mad. But I kind of rationalized it because of Spence's inexperience. Now, Mortimer and Hesho, I trusted them both quite a bit. Mortimer in particular was a draft, which was very interesting. I was talking about genderless species before, and she's falls in that category. And, even though she was part of the supremacist alien race, you know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, she's cool, though. She has good, values. So I feel like I can trust her. And I feel like Spencer should trust her. Hesho was also very cool. He was, formerly a monarch. And then he kept being like, oh, my people outvoted me. Ah, so funny. And, they were in, the standoff, Spencer and Hesho, towards the end. And Hesho's like, I will kill you. Don't do it. And then he's like, actually, I've been outvoted. So we are now on your side. And I'm like, that's great. But the antagonist in this book, I liked quite a bit. And, if you follow politics at all, don't worry, this won't be a huge political rant. But that the biggest fantasy dystopian writer that is quoted and used in politics is George Orwell. And basically he had these terms from the book 1984 called doublespeak and basically ways that governments can propagandize their people. And I was thinking about that a lot this book, because think about it. The superiority races did not like aggression. And anytime Spencer inhaled too aggressively, it's like, whoa, oh my God, that's so my. That's what they would always say. My, how aggressive. And it's like, dude, you're literally in charge of the most powerful military in the galaxy. And you're accusing other people of being aggressive. And, this happens, again, outside of fantasy books and, looking at Orwell, where the global hegemonic power is oh, these are, wars of defense, even though they're in the other countries. And, even in the real world, if you look at, Pentagon statements or whatever, it's why are we in Iraq? And it's oh, these are wars of defense. And it's wars of defense. Okay, why are we helping Saudi Arabia bomb Yemen? Defense, security threat. And it's come on, man, no. And that's what I felt like in this book. How aggressive, my. And it's these are just subjugated races just trying to do the best for themselves. And the superiority races were defining themselves as non-aggression by definition because of their race. And, that's what makes a good villain. They're using the political climate, the cultural climate, to their advantage to do their evil deeds. Or at least to me, that's what makes a good villain. And it's very interesting because I've talked about it on a more global or across the galaxy sort of hegemonic level. But you can also talk about it on a more interpersonal level. Think about tropes being used against races of people to just discredit them. How is how aggressive any different from the angry black man trope that we see in the real world? So yeah, it's very cool to me how Sanderson is, I don't know if he's doing it intentionally or unintentionally, but he's interconnecting real world situations and real world history into his fantasy books. And he's doing it in a way that feels to me very natural, particularly in this book. So yeah, I love it. I'm looking forward to continuing exploring this universe. I honestly have no idea where the next book is going to go. Delvers, they exist. I don't know what else to say. So yeah, we'll definitely be reading book 3 when it comes out in my Discord. Join my Discord if you want to talk about that, or just any book or food or whatever. I don't even know what my Discord's talking about right now. But, the conversation goes all over the place. Also, I don't know, I was thinking about giving this book 4 or maybe 4.5 stars, but after this review, I've talked myself into giving this book a higher rating. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So yeah, comment, subscribe, and happy Fantasy Friday, and see you guys next time.